Hi everyone, this is BritSimon. So let's talk about documents. This is an extremely important, critical area of your visa application for a DV lottery case. If you get this wrong, you will not be scheduled. You will not get your green card. So it's important that you listen to what I'm about to say and that you take action and that you take this seriously. Honestly, your case depends on it. I have seen cases not get their green cards because they didn't follow these simple instructions. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and share with you let's see, share screen. I hate this sharing thing. Entire screen. Okay, this is an article I created before, which has full instructions for the document procedure. It has a copy of the email that KCC sent out asking for the documents. That's towards the end of this document here, and towards the end of my article, and also some explanations from me, some tips in there. But still, some people get this wrong, and so I want to show you that. I also want to show you, and I'll come back and show you this in a few moments, the instructions. When I say read the instructions, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these instructions and the reciprocity pages. I've just picked on Armenia here, but I could have shown any of the countries. The reciprocity pages, which I consider to be part of the critical instructions you have to read. Okay, so I'm going to show you each of those things, and hopefully that'll be useful for you. Okay, so let's talk about what are the documents that the email requesting the documents asks for. Let's talk about those things in order, and I'll talk about a few tips for each of those things as we go through. So the first thing they ask for is the passport biographic page. This should be simple. The biographic page is the one that contains all of your details. It's inside the passport typically, and it's the one that has the machine readable information, and it has all of your biographic information on that page. You don't have to scan every single other page in your passport. They just want that page. So open the passport, lay it on the scanner, and scan just that page. Now, if you have applied for the lottery with an old version of the passport, you need to show that old version of the passport and the new version of the passport if you've renewed your passport. Okay, so send both of those. The reason you have to do that is that KCC want proof that you followed the instructions at the time that you entered the lottery, that you provided a valid and unexpired passport at the time that you entered the lottery. So you need to send both versions, the unexpired new one that you've obtained and the old version that you entered the lottery with. If you chose to ignore the requirement for passport for no good reason, then frankly this is it. This is the end of your trail, because you can't satisfy this particular requirement. If on the other hand you felt that there was some justified reason that fitted the instructions, right? So you're from a communist country that doesn't provide passports, for example. That was one of the very rare exceptions. Then you can write a document, and you can send that in place of your passport that was supposed to be there on the time you entered the lottery. But just understand, the majority of people that have not entered their passport did that because it was inconvenient to them, because it was expensive to get the passport, because they thought time would run out, because whatever. And all of those reasons are invalid reasons. Okay, there are very few exceptions to this policy. You had to have had a passport at the time of an unexpired, valid passport at the time of entry. Local passports, expired passports, none of that was acceptable. You had to have a proper international passport at the time of entry, even if it was valid for only 1 day after the time you entered. Doesn't matter. You could have renewed it later. But the day you entered, you had to have a passport. Okay, so that's the first thing about the passport biographic page. The next thing would be your birth certificate. This should be relatively easy for most of you to obtain. You should already have it. If you have to get an official copy of your passport, sorry, of your birth cert, then go ahead and do that. Generally, the instruction for birth certificate talks about having the long form of the birth certificate. What that means is that on the birth certificate itself, there is a place for the both parents, mother and father, on the birth certificate. You may not have had your father register your birth, for example. Perhaps you were born out of wedlock. That's okay, but the version of the birth certificate that you send should be the version that allows for the entry of both parents, mother and father. It's not important whether your parents are alive or anything like that. That's not what they're trying to prove. They just want the long form version of the birth certificate. Okay. So provide that and follow local instructions, right? So my birth certificate, I've only got one copy or one version of my birth certificate, which was issued to me when I was born, to my parents, if you like. And so it's over 50 years old because I'm over 50 years old. That's fine. In my country, that's a local procedure. Some countries require that you get an up-to-date version or issuance or official copy of your birth certificate. If that's the case in your country, then follow the local instructions, okay? And the reciprocity page does clear up exactly those requirements, okay? So birth certificate, that's something else you're going to need to provide. If you've ever been married, you need to provide your marriage certificate, right? If you're married now or were married before, you need to provide that marriage certificate. That's the same whether your spouse is traveling with you or not, okay? So if you're married today, but you've decided your spouse is not going to go through the DV lottery program with you, doesn't matter, you still need to provide the marriage certificate, okay? If you're divorced, you need to provide the marriage certificate and marriage termination documents, right? Marriage termination documents would be a divorce certificate. It could also be a death certificate. If you're widowed, then you would provide the marriage certificate showing that you were married, but the death certificate of your spouse showing that your spouse died. Okay, so that's what they mean by marriage termination documents. How was the marriage terminated? And all of these certificates should be legally acceptable in your country. So America recognizes marriage from all over the world if it's legal in the country where the marriage is performed. Okay, so if you live in a country where gay marriage is legal, then they'll accept that documentation. America will accept that documentation. If you went to another country where marriage it was performed for foreigners, and I did that actually. I got married in Hawaii in America when I lived at that time, I lived in the UK. So I went to Hawaii and got a marriage certificate from America. That marriage document is valid. Okay, just because it wasn't issued in my country, that's not the point. It was issued in the place where the marriage was performed, and that is my legal basis for marriage. So provide the marriage certificate from wherever you happen to get married. If you've done a customary marriage, that may be legally acceptable in your country. Depends on your country rules. But you should back that up with a legal marriage certificate. So in some countries, there's traditional marriage, which customary marriage, etc., and then there's an option to have a legal marriage. You should do that legal marriage, and you should obtain the certification for that and provide that to KCC. Okay. If you've ever been in the military, you need to provide the military records. Okay, so military records should be easy to obtain in most countries. If you're still currently serving in the military, that could be more complicated. You need to think about how you're going to provide those military records. If you're in certain countries where the military is frankly itching to go to war with America, you may not be able to get military records, and for that reason, the reciprocity pages talk about some countries where the documentation may not be available. But in most other cases, if you did national service or any sort of form of service with the military, and I don't mean as a civilian connected to the military, I mean with the military, then you need to provide military certificate for your time of service. Okay. Police certificates. I suspect this is one of the areas that is screwing people up left, right, and center. I think this is one of the areas that people are making mistakes on. The reason I'm saying that is I've had a number of people who have written to me over the times, and occasionally are someone, people write to me saying, I've tried to send my documents and KCC keep telling me that the documents are not complete, but I've checked it 4,800 times and it's complete. I promise I've checked it. I know I've checked it. I've followed the instructions. So sometimes I say, okay, I've got a spare few minutes, send them to me and I'll have a look at your documents, right? And without exception, in every single case where I've done that, I've realized what the problem is with the documents within a couple of minutes of getting the email. Okay, literally exactly like that. And generally speaking, the things that people forget are the police certificates that they need, right? So I want to show specifically, I want to show that and show you what I mean by, what are the police certificates. So let me share my screen again. I'll share this screen. Okay, and you can go into, actually, you can look at my document. It's probably the easiest way. So this is the extract from the email that is sent to you, and they provide this information. And for some reason, some people think, I don't know, some people just get this wrong. So the way this table is written, it's sort of a conversation. It says, if you, and then submit the plate. And the way you're supposed to read this is, you say, if you are 16 years or older, right? And you have lived in your country of nationality for more than 6 months at any time in your life. Okay, so you were born, let's say like me, you were, born in the UK. My country of nationality, therefore, is the UK. If I had lived in the UK at any time of my life for more than 6 months, so let's say from 2 years old to 3 years old, right? More than 6 months, even though I wasn't over 16 at that time, then I would need to provide a police certificate from my country of nationality. That's what that first line of instruction is saying, right? So if you are 16 years or older, I am now, have lived in your, and you have lived in your country of nationality for more than 6 months at any time in your life, yes, that would be true if I'd lived there from age 2 to age 3, then submit the police certificate from your country of nationality. That's the first police certificate that I would need to submit. But it may not be the only police certificate, and this is what catches people out. I think people perhaps read this list and feel like they only need to provide one police certificate, and that is not true. You may need to provide more than one police certificate. Okay, so the next line says, if you are 16 years or older and have lived in your current country, in your country of current residence, if different from nationality, for more than 6 months. So let's say I'm currently living in France, right? I was born in the UK, but I then moved to France, and I'm 16 years or older, and I've lived in that country for more than 6 months. Then I need to provide a certificate for that country as well. France, in my example, right? I need to get a certificate for that. Okay, so that's to do with my current country. So now we've talked about a police certificate I need from my country of nationality and the current country. And that's for a lot of people, that's going to be what you require. But if you have ever lived, third line says, if you have ever lived in a country for another country for 12 months or more, some other country, let's say I lived in Germany for 12 months or for 14 months. Or let me say if I'd lived there for 11 months, right? Let me just sort of throw a wrinkle out there. Because the 11 months is so close to 12 months, I'm going to say, look, just get the police certificate. Right, so if you have ever lived in another country for 12 months or more, or even close to 12 months, and you were 16 years or older at the time that you lived there, okay? So let's say I moved to Germany when I was 8 years old, right, and lived there for 2 years, and then moved away and I'd never been there again since, I would not need to provide the police certificate in that case from Germany, right? But if I was 16 years or older, at the time that I lived in Germany, and I lived in Germany for more than 12 months, then I need to provide the police certificate from that country also, right? So, so you need to get the police certificate from that country, even though you've left that country. So far, I may have 3 police certificates that I need to provide, but I'm not finished yet, right? Let's say, and if you were arrested for any reason, regardless of how long you lived in that city or country, no matter what age you were, then you need to provide a police certificate from that country, right? So if I was visiting Germany, and on some sort of, brief holiday for 2 months, and I managed to get myself arrested. Now, arrested doesn't mean a civil dispute, doesn't mean I had a civil disagreement with someone. It means that I was arrested by the police, right? Not necessarily convicted, but arrested. Even though I'd only been in that country for a couple of months, I would then need to provide a police certificate from that country or from that city, wherever I was arrested. Okay. So you can see that for a lot of people, they're going to have to provide probably more than one police certificate. And in the cases I've seen, more often than not, the lack of additional police certificates is what the problem is. Okay. Okay. So let's just stop sharing that for a moment. Okay, so that's police certificates. Now, if you have been arrested, you would have court records of some sort. If you're arrested, you go to court, and there will be some sort of court documentation. In the court documentation, it says how the court case went. You were acquitted, you were convicted, whatever information. They need to know that information. That's why they ask for court records. They want to know the nature of the crime that you committed, and whether you were convicted or not, and the nature of the punishment that you received. It's to do with they need to assess how serious the crime was that you committed and what type of crime it was, and it's to do with something called moral turpitude. But if you have questions about that, then let me know. But for most people, that won't be necessary. Hopefully, I hope most of you are not getting arrested all the time. Okay, so court records if needed. So I've talked about the main documents. Those documents need to be provided for each person that is going through the process. That means, for the selectee, principal selectee, and a spouse. And if the spouse obviously is over 16, they'll need to provide police certificates and those additional documents. For children, you only need to provide the passport biographic page and the birth certificate, right? Very simple for children. For spouses, you may need to provide all of that documentation. Perhaps you're married to someone that needs to provide multiple police certificates, was in the military, so needs to provide that. Perhaps needs court documentation, whatever, right? You need to provide all of that information. If your spouse was previously married and has a different marriage certificate from you, provide that and the divorce documentation for that marriage as well, right? So use a little bit of common sense, but hopefully you're understanding you need to provide a number of documents, and you need to gather these documents. Now, let's talk about translations for a moment. You may need to provide translations. The rule on translations is this. If your documents are in English, it doesn't matter where in the world you are interviewing, your documents are acceptable if they're in English, okay? Don't need a translation from English, of course. If you have a document that's, let's say, in French, if the official language of the country where you're interviewing is French, then you don't need to translate that document. So if you're interviewing, let's say, in Paris, and you've got a document in French, you don't need to translate that document. If you have another document, one of the documents we talked about that is in German, let's say, for whatever reason you got married in Germany or whatever, and you're interviewing in France, then you would need a translation, because that document is not in the official language of the embassy where you live, where you're interviewing. Okay. So think about that, and then the translations need to be certified. That you don't need a professional translator to translate documents, but the person that translates the document should not be a family member of yours, should not be you, should not be a family member of yours. And the person who translates the document should be able to write on the document, I certify that I'm able and qualified to translate this document. I'm fluent in this language, signed whatever. There is an official format of that statement. I've got it on my FAQ in my blog, but it's roughly along the lines of what I've just said. Okay, it's simple. It's a simple statement. That's what they generally mean by certified. In some countries, you're going to need to get all documents certified or otherwise processed by local government offices. That's a possibility. And again, it depends on what is normal in the country from where those documents are coming from, or perhaps the place where you're having your interview. So if the country you're interviewing in has some sort of rule that every document needs to be officially stamped by some notary or something like that, then you'll need to go through that process on all of those documents, because that's the requirement in the local area. But or if that document needed that sort of process because of where the document came from, then you'll need to go through that process for that document. But again, this is a matter of following the instructions. Okay. So in all cases, read the instructions. Let's talk about the instructions for a moment. Just before I go on to the file formats and the naming convention, let's just talk about that. So I'm going to share my screen again. Don't follow these tips again. Yeah. Share. Okay. So you should now be seeing this. Right. When I say read the instructions, I first and foremost mean this page. I'll put the link in the description below, and hopefully about there'll be a link to this page as well. But really look below in the YouTube description below. Okay. So these are the instructions. It goes through step by step. If you're selected, what should you do? Confirm your qualifications and so on. You need to read these instructions. Okay. Again, don't tell me that you're too busy to read these instructions to get a green card. A green card is the most valuable, life-changing opportunity you ever had in your life. So you can read these instructions. It will take you an hour or so. I've read them over and over again. I don't need to read them anymore. But you can definitely read these instructions. Okay. If you need to, use Google Translate them into your own language. There are ways to get this translated as well, right? But so you need to get those instructions. The other part of the instructions, when I say read the instructions, I refer to the reciprocity page, and all you have to do is just Google reciprocity page. It's the only page, it's the first page that comes up. Now, if you have, let's say you lived in Albania, right, and you need to provide documents from Albania, whether it's a police certificate, you no longer live in Albania, but you need to provide a document from Albania, then you would come to the reciprocity page, you'd select Albania as your country, and you could scroll down here until you see police, court, prison records, and you could read the instructions. The instructions tells you whether or not the police certificates are available. If the instructions for that particular country say that document is unavailable, unavailable means they don't expect you to provide that document. So you don't need to provide the document in that case. But in the vast majority of cases, there are instructions that say, yes, you need to provide a police certificate or a marriage certificate or whatever it is, right? In here are very helpful and very important instructions on how to obtain the documents. It talks about the fee, where you apply, the procedure for obtaining, right? There's all sorts of information in here. It varies for every single country. So you need to follow those instructions. If you were born in Albania, then you would need to come to this section where it says birth certificates, right? And it would tell you exactly how to obtain the document in that case, and whether that document is available or not, right? Same thing for let's see what else, marriage certificates, same thing, right? So depending on which of those documents I described earlier that you're going to need, and depending on the countries that you were either born in or you're married in, or you need police certificates from, etc., or military records, depending on those scenarios, you would come into the reciprocity page and make sure you understand the instructions for that particular country. It'll also tell you, by the way, general documents. It'll tell you general information, whether documents are considered trustworthy from that country or not, whether there's special procedures like some sort of notary or notarization of the documents, etc. It will go through those steps as well. It will describe those steps. Okay. Okay. And there's everything you need. You just have to come in here and expand it and read it, right? Everything you need. So you've got the instructions, the reciprocity page. You need to look at the reciprocity page for every country that you're going to need some document from, and then also read the instructions or the reciprocity pages for the embassy that you're going to interview in. You'll also see from the interview, by the way, let's see, list of, yeah. So if you come into the instructions in step 8, it says prepare for the interview. And in that section, it says, please visit the list of US embassies and consulates to review embassy and consulate instructions. So again, if you're going to interview at some particular embassy, you can come in here and find out any specific information about about documents or about the procedures for interviewing at that country. So that's important. Okay, so that should be pretty clear, I hope. I'm really hoping, because this is really critical. Let's talk about the file formats and email format, etc. So in my document, in my article, I explain about some critical rules. Actually, let me show you that. I'm going to show you that that article again. There are some instructions very clearly written in the email they send to you. Okay. Firstly, they ask you to name the documents. This is the file format. The documents themselves can be JPEGs, right? Which is a photo, essentially. You can take a photo of a document with a camera phone. You can put the document on a well-lit table and take a photo from above. That's all you need to do. Or you can use a scanner, like a scanner printer. You can put documents on there. Whatever documents you send, though, must be legible, fully legible. They must be clear. If you've taken a photo, it can't be all screwed up document and badly lit and not readable. It needs to be legible. That means readable. And it needs to be named appropriately, right? And so the naming convention they suggest is your case number, the full case number, with the year, with the region, with the full number, right? And then your name, because the document is about you, right? And then what document that is. So they say John Doe, John Doe, just a fictitious name. So John Doe passport, John Doe birth certificate, John Doe military record, whatever document it is. You can do that. You can also combine all of your documents in one document. So if you're producing a PDF document that has got a number of pages, that's acceptable. So you would have, in that case, your case number, including the year and the region and the case number, right? Your case number is irrelevant without the year and the region. And then your name, and then you would put all documents.pdf, right? The PDF is an Adobe Acrobat version. I would recommend using that if you have the ability to create a PDF. It's great. Otherwise, a series of JPEGs are okay, but again, you're going to have to name each of the documents carefully. You can see in their instructions, they recommend that a spouse or a derivative has their own set of documents and their own documents named for them, right? So it's the same case number as yours, obviously, but it would have a different name, and then it would refer to the document that that file is referring to. Okay. All right. And it has some useful instructions here. Use your case number as the subject of the email. just your case number. Again, this part is your case number. The maximum email size is 30 megabyte. Be very careful about this. If you've got multiple documents, when you've got a spouse and you've got 3 kids, you have to be very careful at the size of the email, right? Once you've got all the attachments. They say if the total size of your attachments is larger than 30 megabyte, send multiple emails using the case number as the subject of each email. So gather all of the emails together, have them ready to send, and then send them very quickly one after the other, right? Don't have them spaced out by days or hours. Have them sent more or less at the same time, okay? And in all cases, the case number being the subject of the email. They say, please send your documents for KCC review only after you have requested all of the required documents for yourself and your accompanying family members, right? So if you don't have a police certificate yet because you've applied for it and you're waiting for it, don't send your documents, right? Wait until you've got all your documents together, because you're just wasting your time and theirs, and you'll be confused because they're not going to communicate to you very well, I have to say. So you're going to be confused and you could screw up your whole case. So wait until you've got the whole set of documents and then send that, right? And you have to use this special email address that is purely to be able to send the documents, right? kccdvdocuments@state.gov. You only use that address. You can ask KCC about documents on the other email address, which is shown at the bottom here, that email address. You can ask them about documents, but you have to send them to this special email address, okay? Okay. This talks about translations. It talks about documents being photographed or scanned, and it talks about they must be legible, right? What else? Let me just scan down here. Biographic page talked about birth certificate, marriage termination, yeah, military records, police certificates, court records. That's it. Okay, so now you should be an expert on documents, right? I'm hoping you should be an expert. What will happen next? You'll send your documents. You may have been asked, or you may not have been asked. This is something that people are wondering. Right now, we're late February of 2021. And it's getting to the point where I think people should be sending documents. So I'm now going to say to people, start sending your documents, whether you've been asked or not. There's specific reasons for me saying that this year. It may be different in future years, and you may be watching this video a year from now, and so the answer might be slightly different. But generally speaking, KCC would normally ask you for the documents because you would send in the DS-260. They've processed your DS-260, and now they're asking for your documents, and you would respond to that request for documents. They would send you the email that I've got linked there, right? But if they haven't asked, and if you're in February 2021 and you're DV 2021, therefore, we need to get some things moving with KCC because of the difficulties there have been. So I'm suggesting now, send in your documents. When you send your documents, you're going to get an automatic response saying, we've got your email. That email, that automatic response that they send by email is not proof of anything. Doesn't mean that you sent the right documents. You could have sent a picture of Mickey Mouse and a picture of your invoice from lunch, right? It has no validity at all to say that you sent the right documents, a complete set of documents, or anything else. Okay, so they will send you this automatic email. It purely means that you sent an email to that special email address. That's all it means. Then within hopefully a few days or a week or two, they will respond back to you to say they've processed your documents. But understand that in general, they're processing lowercase numbers first. Okay, so if they suddenly get overwhelmed with a bunch of people sending in documents, they're going to work through those cases and they may only respond based on your case number. That's a concern, and that's one of the reasons that I've held off suggesting people send in documents en masse, everybody sending documents. And if your case number is high, let's say Africa greater than 50,000, Europe greater than 25,000, Asia greater than 15,000, then frankly at the moment it doesn't make sense to send in your documents, because your case number is high and you're just going to be clogging up their email systems and delaying the cases of people below you. And don't forget, you need people below you to be processed before you can be processed. That's how it works. So you trying to get ahead of people below you is stupid. That's exactly what it is. It's stupid because you're just slowing yourself down by clogging up the process, right? So it doesn't make sense to suddenly, if you're Africa 80,000 or something, it doesn't make sense to send in your documents now. You're just wasting everybody's time and you're not helping yourself. It's just going to be, you're just going to be waiting. And more than likely, they'll lose or forget that you even sent your documents by the time it's your turn to be processed. Okay, so don't do that. But if your case number is relatively low, again, use some common sense. Low starts at number one, high is the highest numbers, right? I mean, it's, there's a whole bunch of numbers. Actually, I just realized my hand gestures there may be confusing to people. People often ask me, I've got case number 4,000 in Africa, is that low or high? Well, it's a low number, meaning it's closer to number one, and it's not 80,000, which is where the highest numbers are, but I put 80,000 down here. So it starts at number one, ends at 88,000 for Africa in DB 2021. But, really use some common sense about how we call those things. Okay, so you're going to get an automated email, and within a few days, hopefully, or and right now, literally right now, as of today, KCC are actually being quite responsive. They are processing some documents from people who've sent in documents recently. So you may hear back within a few days that your documents have been processed and that you're ready, if your case number is low. So go ahead and send them in, and hopefully you then get an email that says your documents are all satisfactory. Thanks for providing all the documents. It starts off with congratulations, and it goes on to say that you're ready for scheduling, right? And that's the letter you want to see, essentially. Okay, I'm really hoping I've got this nailed. So just to recap, you need your biographic page, you need your birth certificate, and everybody will need a biographic page on a birth certificate, whether you're a child, if you're a derivative child or a spouse or whatever else, everybody will need that as a minimum. If you've ever been married, you need to provide your marriage certificate. If you've ever been divorced, or if you've lost your spouse and you have a death certificate, you need to provide that. If you were ever in the military, you need to provide your military documents, right? Military records. If you, you're going to need to provide at least one police certificate for the adults, for anyone over 16. That could also mean derivative children of over 16. You're going to have to provide those. And you may well have to provide more than one police certificate. So please review that section very carefully to make sure you know which police certificates you need to provide. Court records, if you've ever been arrested and went to court, you need to provide that. And translations, potentially, of all of those documents I just mentioned, potentially. If they're already in English, no problem. English is acceptable. Please read the instructions. I've shown them here. I'll link them in the description below. It is essential you follow the instructions. And again, if you're too bored to read the instructions, then you don't deserve your green card. It's as simple as that. Okay. Behave like you're grateful for this opportunity and read the instructions, please. And then pay attention to the file formats and the email format that I mentioned in my article. Please go and read my article. It does offer a couple more hints and tips on how to name the documents, and a couple of other sort of frequently asked questions about that. But in general, I think we've covered most of it. But go and have a look at that article; it will help you. And I covered just at the end there. I covered the process that you can expect. Okay, I'm hoping that you all get this right. If you don't, you are going to mess up your own cases. So you know, please take this seriously, get this right, and get it done. And fingers crossed. Let's all hope everybody just, you know, nails this. All right. Thanks, everybody. Please make sure you subscribe to my channel. That helps me get my information out there. The more subscribers I have, the more coverage we have. And the more coverage we have, or I have through my channel, the more the good information gets out, as opposed to some lousy information. Honestly, people are, again, driving me nuts with crazy information, inaccurate information. And so we need to get behind, please get behind my channel, because, you know, I'm sure you understand now the information I'm providing is accurate and it's good information. So, you know, let's get that information out. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you subscribe to my Twitter page, Twitter feed, because that's a very immediate way that I can get information out. And also make sure you're reading my blog. Okay. And again, if any of that is too much for you, or if you don't like the way I talk to people, or if you don't like my accent, well, feel free to find somebody else to advise you. But honestly, you know, well, just get on with it. All right. Okay, everybody. Thanks then. Bye-bye.